In this presentation today, we'll be looking at what you can do with formZ Free, which is a very exciting new addition to the formZ product line. If you go to our website at formz.com, and if you click on the product section here, you'll see that formZ basically comes in three flavors: Pro, Junior, and Free. formZ Pro includes all the modeling tools and features available for modeling, rendering, animation, and layout. formZ Junior is a lighter version with about half the tools at about half the cost. formZ Free is a smaller subset of tools and is completely free with no restrictions for professional, academic, or home use, and is a great way to get started with 3D solid modeling with formZ. So what can you do with formZ Free? Well, if you click on the formZ Free link, you can access some general highlights about the program. And for a full list of features, you can click right here. And we have a very comprehensive feature comparison chart for Pro, Junior, and Free. Now, at a quick glance, we can see that formZ Free has quite a few features found in formZ Pro and formZ Junior, and I'm confident that you will be absolutely amazed at how much we packed into this free little version here. So with that, let's launch formZ Free and see what we can do with Free. So switch over. There we go. Here is formZ Free. And it has the same easy-to-use dynamic interface found in formZ Pro and Junior. And to help you get started with formZ Free, here's some very useful built-in learning resources. When you first launch it, you should see a Getting Started dialog. And this has some quick start files that you can open up. It's a step-by-step quick start tutorial file, and you actually follow along and you click along with what it tells you to do in that file. It's a great way to learn the basic interface features of formZ Free. You can also right click on any tool and choose the manual option, and you see all of our documentations online. So just right click any tool, it'll take you right to that page to give you information about that particular tool or feature. And you can also right click and choose the view video option. So we have videos for some of the tools, and so you can watch those and it'll give you step-by-step information of how to use that particular tool. All right. So with that, let's start drawing some shapes. Here's how formZ Free works. All sorts of different shapes that we can draw here. When we select a tool, all the tool options are available over here. So when we start drawing something, it can be a variety of different types of forms based on what your tool options are set to. You can draw a shape and make it a 2D line. You can make it a 2D wall profile. You can extrude it into a surface object, and you can make a wall with some kind of thickness, and you can see that same drawing tool can create a variety of different types of shapes. Now these are a parametric object, and so you can see we can go in and modify that shape afterward. I can grab hold of those controls and change that after it's created. I can modify the height, change the height value, and I can just dynamically modify any of these parameters. Let's change, this is the wall thickness, and I can also change these parameters numerically inside the tool options. So you can see I can type in values for the wall thickness and things like that. All right, that's basically how the drawing tools work. You can also create shapes using some of the primitives that come with formZ Free. So cubes, cylinders, spherical type objects, and also too, if you look at these, you can see that these have parametric controls also. So I can start off with just a basic primitive type shape and just mess with these controls and have some fun with that geometry and change it dynamically, or change some of the options here in tool options and maybe adjust this radius down and so on and so forth. So I think you get the idea if I can mess with those. Even the spherical type objects, you can see that there's a whole variety of different types of shapes that you can create and change some of the different parameters and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, some other ways of creating form is to, besides starting off with some of these basic shapes, we can actually use the reshaping tools to sculpt a more complex form. So for example, I'll start off with just a simple box, and some of the reshape tools are here in formZ Free. So I can take and perhaps grab a segment and offset it, and that is inserted into the object because insert option's on. I can use reshape, and this is a real-time Boolean operation, so it's adding and subtracting volume. So I can push it in to subtract volume, pull it up to add volume, and now we can then further articulate that form by just offsetting segments and reshaping the different faces. And we get something complex. It looks like that. It looks like a chair, doesn't it? Well, we also include subdivision modeling in formZ free. Now, of course, we don't have all the subdivision tools in here. If you look at formZ Pro, there's like 13 different subdivision modeling tools. Now, formZ free only has a couple of them, but you'll be amazed at how much you can do with just the couple tools that are here. One thing we can do is take this object that we have here and smooth it out. So we can start off with just a cage, and then by smoothing that out, we can go in and modify the controls that are there. And there is a sharpness option too. So you can see as I push that forward or back, actually I'm going to apply that to the whole object here. You can see I can get the original shape. As I increase the sharpness, as I drag it down, you can see we smooth it more and more based on the sharpness value that we set there. Okay, and we can create maybe something like a chair that looks like that. So you can see if we want to create the entire chair, pretty easy to create a very simple cage. We can start with a box and reshape it into a quick cage, and then let the subdivision do all the hard work for us and smooth all that stuff out. So as an example of that, let's go ahead and try that. Bring up a little file that already has most of the cage done, because I think you get a pretty good idea of how this can be accomplished. So what I'm going to do is go back. Tell you what, I'm going to bring up the cage before I actually change that, and just to show you how easy it is to continue on to create that cage. I can reshape a face off the bottom over here. We can move different segments, grab this segment here and drag that down. We can use all the transformation tools on this cage. Let's use a scaling operation on this face right there. Smaller, reshape that, and there I think you get a pretty good idea of how fast we can make that cage in just a couple of minutes. And then going to our subdivision tool, just simply smooth everything out, and we have a nice organic looking chair. And if we go to shade of full mode, you can see all this transition work has already been done for us using that subdivision tool. All right, let's create something a little more complex instead of just this very simple chair. What we'll do is maybe create some kind of an architectural column. You can see how easy it would be to create this very organic shape. You can see we have these fluted sections in there. Everything's nice and smooth. It's round here. It's square on the top. And how can we create all this type of complex transitions here? Well, all we have to do is build a very simple cage here. And there's some things we can do with the subdivision tools and formZ free that can help us articulate, even these complex forms like that. So let's try it. So what we'll do, go back into formZ here, and we'll start off with just a simple box. And here's another reshaping tool that's available and free, and this is the offset outline. And you can see with that I can just click on any face and offset a shape. And you see the insert option is on, so it does insert it into that object. I can then reshape that face up. Let's do another offset outline, reshape that up. Actually, I can push this in to subtract material, push it all the way through to subtract that whole part of the object. Maybe reshape it up. And this is one single solid object here, and this will form the base of that column. And then from here we'll go to the subdivision tool, and you can see one of the other things we can do is if we want this bottom part to be flat, we can actually select just the bottom face of that cage, and then if I were to drag that sharpness slider up, you can see that I can flatten out the bottom of that. So you can still create hard edge sharp geometry with the smooth subdivision modeling. All right, now for the top here, it's sort of curved on the top there, so I want to flatten that out. So I'll select the top face right there, and if you move around a little bit, you can select just that top face of that original cage, or the original frame that was used in the subdivision tool. And then I can increase the sharpness, but I'm not going to crank it up to 100%. I'm going to sharpen it maybe only about 50%. So you can see it's still flat in the middle, and there's just a little bit of rounding on the ends there. So here's where we get into the fine details of the subdivision tool for really having control over how that form is being created. All right, let's do the center fluted section. With that, we can just go in and start off with just a simple polygon object. So use the polygon tool, maybe make it a 24-sided polygon, and then from there give it the radius that we want. I'm going to use this extrude option to take a circle and just extrude it up. Now I'm not going to make the entire length of the column. I'm going to do a short section first, and then I'm going to do the reshape operation out with the keep edges. And so now I can actually reshape another extension from there, and I reshape another section up a little higher, and then I'll do a couple more. And you can see by using the reshape with the keep edges option, I can actually add these seams of additional edges in there in the mesh, and that will influence the subdivision, because the subdivision is actually smoothing out every face that's on that object. So if I were to go in and perhaps reshape inward every other face here. I can create the fluted sections here, and you can actually select multiple faces simultaneously with that Reshape tool. Just hold down the Shift key and grab hold of multiple faces and reshape them all simultaneously. There we go. So if you were to spend maybe another minute or two, we could finish off the rough cage for the column as we see it here. And then going to the Subdivision Tool, we can simply click on that object and smooth everything out. Now we want the top and the bottom of the column to be flat, so we already know how to do that, right? Just simply select that bottom face here, and we can increase the sharpness to make that perfectly flat. So we have a nice hard, sharp edge on the top and bottom of our column. And there we go. So now if I go to Shaded Full mode, look at this from different angles, you can see all that detail was derived just from a very simple cage type object. All right. Now for the top capital, actually we're looking at a couple new things we can do with the Subdivision tool. We're going to sort of start off the same way we did last time. We'll just have sort of a faceted type box here. Let's go back to shaded work mode. And we're going to use the subdivision on that. And we're going to do something similar on the top here. We'll just grab this bottom face here and give a sharpness of about 50%. So it rounds it just a little bit, but keeps it relatively flat in the bottom section here. But the top of this thing, we want this to be square. And so how can we sharpen this entire top section so that it transitions from a round shape here to more of a rectangular shape on the top? Well, if we select the top face and sharpen that, you can see it's actually flattening just the top face only. So it's still round over here, but just the top face has been sharpened. And so what I'll do is select this vertical edge, and I can actually sharpen that also. So now you can see the more sharpness you put on any topological part of that cage that you select, the closer that form will be to the original cage object. So I can just select each of these vertical sections here, sharpen those, and you can see I can pull those all out. All right, there we go. So now we go from round to a square section on the top. Now we can continue to move these controls of the cage, but we can also edit these subdivision objects directly. I can use the Move tool and just grab hold of any one of these edges or points or faces here. And let's say I want to sort of give this a little more transition between the round and the square section. Well, I'll just use the Move or any of the other tools to just edit that subdivision object directly. There we go. So a little more transition between the round and the square sections. All right, so anyways, I think that's a pretty good idea of how the subdivision modeling tools work to create a nice little organic shape that looks like this. Of course, we're going to shade it full. I did apply a material to that. Let's take a quick look at the materials that are in formZ free. I double click on that. There's a bunch of materials that come with it. They're organized in different categories. So we can go to maybe the stucco patterns here and drag and drop this onto the material. And all I have to do is drag and drop it onto the object, and there we go. So now we have a nice little texture applied to that. And that's pretty much basically how you can take a very simple cage type object like we have here and make a very smooth organic shape like we have right there. And this is great for 3D printing also, because this allows us to have a nice quad mesh that exports to a STL file, and we can actually 3D print that. So it's perfect for the 3D printing process. I don't want to spend too much time on Subd. There's so much other stuff I want to show that's in free, but I am going to look at just one more example because there's some other new things I want to show that are available in free. What I'm going to do is look at one more subdivision type object, and that's this internal beams and internal structure that is shown here. This is actually a recreation of an interior space in the One World Trade Center tower. And you can see not only can you create nice organic shapes like this, but also you have a lot of flexibility to edit those things afterwards. And so you can use formZ as an integral part of that design process. And so let's look at some things that we can do to further edit these subdivision objects after they are created. So what we'll do, we'll switch back into formZ free here. And I have the actual model that's here. And you can see here, if I move around the space here, here's the actual 3D model of that thing. Well, it's actually part of it. And what I'm going to do is look at just that subdivision beam that we have there. Turn that on. There we go. And it looks something like that. And I'm going to go to shaded work mode. And we have something like that. Now, how's that created? Well, we already know how to do the cage system, right? So we can use the reshaping tool, start off with just a box and reshape that thing. And also, you can see that there's an actual loop. There's a bridge that the object comes back on itself. So how can we articulate that type of shape? Well, there are Boolean tools. We can union things together, but also the reshaping tool is a real-time Boolean real-time Boolean operation also. So you can see if I were to go back a couple steps here, I'm going to reshape this back. And there was a stage when I was working on this, I had these two different parts of the beam that was coming out this way. And then using the Reshape tool, you can see if I come off of this part here and actually reshape it into the existing object, because it's a Boolean, it actually unions all this together and makes it one single solid object. So that later on when I use the Subdivision tool on that, you can see that everything smooths together as one single object. All right. Now for the ends, I think we know how to sharpen those, right? Just simply grab those faces and maximize the sharpness on there to sort of flatten those out, because when you first apply the Subdivision tool, it's going to smooth every single face of the object. And so in this case, we want to take and have it not smooth these end pieces here. You can actually apply this to multiple objects at the same time. I can select a couple faces there, and there we go, something that looks like that. Now, as we saw in the previous example, there's a lot of ways to edit these subdivision objects when you first create them. So I can go in and grab some controls and move those around and further articulate that subdivision form. Now something else we can do is actually store these as a component. So formZ free includes components, and so what we can do is take this beam that we have here, and I'm going to use the components tool to create a new component. Click on that. Let's call this, how about beam-01 or whatever you want to call it. And then it's stored as a component in your project. You can place it multiple times. Components are great for repetitive type objects. You change one and all of them update. You can also export that to an external library so that these components are accessible in other projects as well. So let's show how that works. If I were to make multiple copies of this or place it multiple times in the scene, you can see I can actually take this column here and let's place it a few times, something like that perhaps. All right. And now I want to make a change. I can select any one of these and I can say edit that component, and then I can turn on the controls. And what I'll do is I'll just make a quick change here. Grab these controls here, move those down, make a drastic change to that object. When I'm all done making changes, I can simply right click and say component is now complete, and it automatically updates all the other components in the project. So you can see that these are very flexible with being able to store them as a component in your formZ free project file. Okay, pretty nice, huh? All right, well, I think that's enough with the subdivision. I'm spending a lot of time on that. There's so many other things I want to show that isn't free that I want to move on to look at some of the other features. How about a lot of the specialty tools that are available in formZ free? Let's take a look at those. What we'll do is maybe build a simple little residential type of a building here. And I just want to show that we have many import options in formZ free. So you can see there's quite a long list here. You can import 3D Studio files, DWG, DXF, DWF, SketchUp files, whatever you want. So we can bring in stuff from other programs. So maybe we bring in a CAD file or something. So, all right. And what we'll do is look at some of the specialty tools such as stairs, roofs, 3D terrains, so on and so forth. So let's try the stair tool. All you have to do is click on any line anywhere, and then it'll generate a stair from that path. You can just draw any line anywhere and use that as the path. Here, I'll just click on that little line that was there. And this is a parametric object, so I can modify any of the parameters over here, change it to a bench or a beam stair, change the parameters for the steps and railings and whatever you want. When you save this and recall that file, all this information is saved with that project. So as your design changes, you can adjust any of those parameters. All right. Now, formZ free also includes a derivative extrusion tool, which allows us to take any type of 2D shape and extrude it into a 3D object. So I can grab a bunch of 2D profiles that are either imported in from Illustrator or CAD file, or just draw any type of 2D shape, and then we can extrude those up into 3D objects. There we go. So we can do some walls here. All right, let's say we want to punch some holes or openings into our objects. There's a whole variety of ways of doing that. One is we can actually use the drawing tools, and one of the modifiers here is the hole, or is the opening option, insert opening. And so we just simply use any drawing tool, draw on any face, and whatever you draw, that's going to be a hole in the object. Circles, splines, whatever you want. Okay, and that comes in real handy if you want to. You can even draw these with numeric accuracy. You can type in numbers if you want. You can bring in a front elevation drawing file, and if you position that just right, I'm going to place it in front, And you can see that when I'm using the drawing tool with the insert opening option, I can just snap to the actual positions on that front elevation, and you can see that it orthographically projects into that first face that we're actually drawing on. You can see that those holes have now been accurately positioned in the front of that object. Okay, so that's just another way of doing that. Let's see, we can also add holes and openings as a window component. formZ Free does include window components, and so you can place those. You can actually create your own. And if you look at the components here, you can see that there's a library that's already set up for you, or you can create your own. And when I place those in there, you can see that that does automatically punch a hole through. It automatically punches a hole through the object, and so if you move the window, that hole will follow along with it. All right. There's also the standard type of components, just like we used with the previous example with that beam. We made our own. formZ Free does come with some other types of components of people and trees and things like that, and you can very easily just place those into the scene. You can also import components from any other file format that's out there. Go to the Google 3D Warehouse or a DWG file, AutoCAD file, whatever you have. Just choose the import option here, and what you do is you find that file that you actually downloaded. So here I have a SketchUp file, or this could be any of the file formats here. Click on that and say open, and that's it, done. And it'll automatically add it to your component library, and there it is, ready to be placed into the scene. So just use the place component tool, and now I can place that item wherever I want in my project. There we go. So there's a lot of different ways of being able to work with components in formZ Free. All right, another specialty tool that we want to look at is the roof tool. That's available. And so I'll click on any face boundary, and it's going to generate a parametric roof from that. Now in this project here, I just happen to have a plan that I brought in, or you can just draw some kind of shape. And then when you click on that, you'll see that whatever that outside boundary is, it'll use that and try to generate an actual roof from that. And we can put in all of our parameters here for the slope, the fascia height, overhang, whatever you want, and just type in some values, and you see it's automatically updating based on the parameters that I give it. And there we go. Now that is a solid object, so you can see as our design progresses, maybe we have a second story that's coming through here. formZ Free does include the Boolean Operation, so we can add and subtract solid objects. So we can subtract the second story object from it to carve it out in order to create the opening for the second story. And now the roof matches perfectly to the rest of the detail. All right. See, what else can we do here? We can also do 3D terrain models. So if you have contour lines, you can just draw lines yourself, or you can import lines, and you can actually put this house that we have here and put it on a 3D solid terrain model if you want. So here's some contour lines that we can use for that. Just simply grab hold of all those contour lines, and not the site boundary, just all the contour lines only. Select the terrain tool, put in the parameters of the type of 3D terrain that you want. Click on your site plan, and then you can see that based on that boundary, it'll actually generate a 3D solid terrain model from those contour lines. And you can choose different types of models. You can do a stepped model, so it looks more like layered cardboard. You can do a triangulated model or a meshed model. You can change the mesh size also, so you can increase or decrease the resolution of that mesh on that 3D solid terrain model, so you can put your building right there. Okay. All right, plenty more tools to look at. Let's see, running out of time here, so I'm going to look at a few more things here. How about the Unfold tool? Let's try that one. Unfold is available in formZ Free, so you can just simply grab hold of any type of item and it'll unfold it. And there's different options to put some connectors on there and labels so that we know which edge goes with which edge there as we fold that back into a 3D shape. All right, works with pretty much any type of object, even curved type shapes. So if I were to select that, you can see that based on where we click, it'll start the unfolding process. We can do it on this actual roof that we created, print that out in your printer and get some scissors and cut that out and tape and glue it together to make a quick little rapid prototype model for yourself there. All right. Let's see, plenty of tools here. Boy, I tell you, what else can we look at? How about lofting? There is Nurbs modeling in formZ free. We don't have the full set of Nurbs tools. If you go into the formZ Pro version, there's like 16 different Nurbs modeling tools, and there's even a Nurbs convert tool which actually converts anything into a Nurbs object. So we don't have the full set here in free because it's free, but there's enough here that you can actually do quite a bit. For example, there's a Nurbs Lofting tool, so I can just take a series of control lines and I can loft through a series of shapes like that. All right, and we get this nice little organic surface that looks like that. All right. If we want, we can reconstruct it, which allows us to increase or decrease the number of controls on that surface. So now you can see we can position those controls where we need them, and then further articulate that form by moving these control handles and modifying that shape. So now we have a nice little complex curved shape there. Now if you want to give that some thickness, right now it's a paper thin surface, and the formZ free also includes the thicken and offset surface tools. So I just simply click on that object, and you can see now it converts that surface into a solid of uniform thickness, and you can set the different parameters here to whatever you want, like that perhaps. Okay. Let's see, we can also do a massing model. We can actually apply thickening to a solid object. And so here we have a solid object, and if I were to look at the clipping planes, let me go and pull that out here, and I'll create a brand new one and click on the plus button here. You can see that with free we can actually use the dynamic clipping planes to sort of visualize. This is a non-destructive plane that's going through your model to sort of visualize it. It's not actually cutting it. You can actually have it cut it if you want. There's an option here for that. But you can see here, I can see that that is a solid object throughout. So if we apply the Thicken tool on that, based on the parameters that we set there, click on that, and there we go. We've actually scooped out the inside. So now you can see if I were to turn that clipping plane back on, we've now converted that solid massing object into a shelled object of uniform thickness. All right. So if we turn that off, we can turn our thickened surface back on, and because these are solids, we can do a Boolean difference on those. I'm going to shade of full mode, and you can see I can subtract one from the other, so I can actually split that object. I delete the top, and there we go. So now you can see that we have those walls, or if this was a product or a desk or whatever you want it to be, you can see that that 3D object has now been trimmed or cut by using the Boolean operations in formZ free. And so if I were to bring that surface back, well, actually it's not a surface anymore, it's a solid, and that's how we get that to match that curving surface there. Turn our clipping plane back on, sort of visualize that space based on the position of that clipping plane, so on and so forth. So anyways, I think you get the idea of some of these other tools we can use for being able to build, not just simple boxy shapes, but more organic looking forms, such as what we have here. Now, speaking of visualization, I do want to look at a few things that are available in the formZ free version for being able to visualize your project. So let's take a look at that. What can you do? Well, let's open up a little sample project. And here, this was can be modeled in formZ free. This was actually a 30-minute model that was in a previous webinar presentation, and all the tools that are in formZ free will allow you to build this actual model. Okay, and from that you can see that one of the options we have is the shaded full mode, which is a live interactive rendering mode, which includes shadows and ambient occlusion and bump mapping and all that stuff. So you can see this is an actual working mode. I can use all of the modeling tools in this mode. So it's a really good way to pre-visualize the textures and lighting effects and things like that. All right, now just to better visualize what's going on here, that's some of these nice effects we have in this real-time rendering mode. If I go down to perhaps a view down here at the bottom, I have one saved here, and you can see that if I go into the display options, we can look at some of the effects that you can use in formZ free. One of them is the bump mapping option. So you can see here with it off, the textures are sort of flat. With it on, we're actually getting the 3D effect there. So that's with it off, and that's with it on. So we can see the ripples in the water and the bumpy texture of the stone tiles and things like that. We can also control the shadows. So it's not just an on-off shadow. Now we can control the actual darkness of those shadows. So I can increase or decrease how intense those shadows are in the scene. And there's also a softness option, so we can actually soften those shadows and make them look a lot more realistic. All right. There's also ambient occlusion. This is real time. So normally you'd see ambient occlusion only in ray trace global illumination renderings. Here we're actually doing it live in real time. So as we're spinning our model and everything, you can see that we can turn that on or off. And that is just darkening where two surfaces meet. So it's sort of subtracting light in the corners and the edges and things like that, which just gives it a higher level of realistic effect in there. Okay. All right. We can also do live dynamic texture mapping. So you can see here, as we looked at it previously, you can see that you can create your own materials. There's a library of predefined materials that come with free. And you can load your own texture image maps and whatever. And when we apply that to the object, like let's say I create this other one here, I can just drag and drop it onto the object. And then there's a edit texture tool, which allows you to take that texture and move it anywhere that you want on the object. And since we're on the shade of full mode, you can see that's a live, interactive, real-time rendering mode. So it's pretty much what you see is what you get. And I can actually, in real time, see what's going on with my texture mapping and things like that. So I can rotate this at an angle and do whatever I need to be able to visualize how that texture is going to be on that object. All right. Some other modes we have. I go back to our 3D view over here. Let's see here. So let's go back to this view. There's also a hidden line rendering mode. So maybe go into front view, show it in a hidden line mode, save that out if we want. You can also put 3D dimensions. We don't have the full set of dimensioning tools as you get in Junior and Pro versions, but there's enough here. You can do some pre-3D dimensioning of your objects here for more of the conceptual modeling here. Put one over here. Maybe I can click on 2 points or grab an edge. And these are 3D dimensions that can be placed anywhere in 3D space. And we can have those attached to any part of the model. And these are associative dimensions, so they are attaching themselves to the actual object. So if you change something, that actual dimension will change. Okay. And let's see what else. Oh, the sun position is in here too. Wow, there's a lot of stuff in here. So let's take a look at that. In the palettes, there's a sun position palette. All right, there we go. So live interactive sun positioning. So I can drag the slider back and forth through a 24-hour day. I can dynamically drag that slider, or it is automatically animated. I don't have to do anything. I just click the play button. It automatically plays it back. You can see I can control the actual speed here between the tortoise and the hare. And I can actually export that also. That's sort of a cool thing. I can actually use this export option and export the sun animation in a AVI file or a QuickTime movie. So you can also choose any city, any part of the world, and then the sun studies will be based on that. So that's all available in formZ free also. All right, well, that's it for the time. There's plenty of other stuff I don't have time to show you here, but hopefully this is a small representative sampling of just some of the many tools and features that are in formZ free. And so if you'd like to download your own version of formZ free, just go to our products page, go to formZ free, and you click on the download button right there, and there it is. So now it should be noted that all the models you build with formZ free are compatible with formZ Pro and formZ Junior. Thanks for watching, and this concludes the formZ free presentation.